Hi, I'm Miss Hearn. Let's get started. Now we're going to talk about graphing functions by plotting points. You might be familiar with this shape, but you might not. So I'm going to assume you don't know anything about it, and we're just going to plot points. And whenever you don't know, you just start with some negatives, some positives, and 0. So I'm going to go ahead and plot for f. We have the x, and then we have the f of x, or y, which is equal to negative x squared, the opposite of x squared. So if I plug in negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2, let's see what I get. So I'm going to have, remember, this is like a box that we're plugging that number into. So we have negative and then negative 2 squared. So that's going to be the opposite of 4, so negative 4. And then if I plug in negative 1, negative of negative 1 squared is going to be negative, our opposite of negative 1 squared is opposite of 1. And if I plug in 0, I'm just going to get 0. If I plug in 1, I have the opposite of 1 squared is negative 1. And if I plug in a 2, I have the opposite of 2 squared is going to be negative 4. So plotting those points, we have, I always like to start with the 0. 0, 0. All right, and then we have negative 1 would be about here, and 1, negative 1 would be over here. And then we also have negative 2, negative 4 would be here, and 2, negative 4. So connecting the dots, it looks something like this. Now, one thing that you should know is all polynomials, any function that's a polynomial, is going to be a nice smooth curve. There aren't going to be any sharp points. So this is going to be more shaped like a U, an upside down U, rather than say like an upside down V. It won't have a sharp point in it. Now let's look at g of x equals negative x squared plus 10. So I'm going to make an xy chart, but it's xg of x. And g of x turns x into negative x squared plus 10. By the way, in case it's confusing you, this squared is only affecting the x, not the negative, which is why these things didn't change to positives up here. In order for the squared to affect a negative, it would have to be in parentheses. Okay, so if x is negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2, let's see what happens. Plugging in negative 2, we get the opposite of negative 2 squared plus 10. So that's going to be negative 4 plus 10, which is 6. If we plug in negative 1, the opposite of negative 1 squared is negative 1 plus 10 is going to be 9. And if we plug in 0, we're just going to get 0 plus 10, which is 10. If we plug in 1, we get negative 1 squared plus 10, which again is 9. And if we plug in 2, we get negative 2 squared plus 10, which again is negative 4 plus 10, which is 6. So what we're really saying is that our new function g goes through negative 2, 6, goes through negative 1, 9, 0, 10, 1, 9, 2, 6. So let's plot those points. So I like to start with the 0. 0, 10 would be up here. And then negative 1, 9 would be about here. And the only reason I'm making little x's is just because it's a flaw in the program. When I make a little dot, sometimes weird things happen. So it should be a dot, not an x, but for technical reasons, I have trouble making dots. All right, and then this would be 1, 9 here. And then negative 2, 6 would be about, negative 2, 6 would be about here, and 2, 6 would be about here. Okay, so connecting the dots then, it's again the same type of shape. By the way, it's going to go forever downward. If I kept plugging in values of x, more x values, I would get lower and lower y values. All right, so what we see here is that the green graph, which remember was g, that g is 10 units above f, but the same shape. Okay, and the reason that happened? Well, because the only difference is we're adding 10 to every y value. When you're asked to graph functions by plotting points, unless you're told otherwise, I want you to use these x values, or a couple of negatives, 0, and a couple of positives will be your best bet for getting the shape that you need. Also, graph on paper first, and then when you go to put it in MyMathLab, once you have it on paper, you'll know the basic shape. So like here, you'll be able to use, oh, it's kind of a U shape, and you'll be able to select the right shape to graph in MyMathLab. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please remember to like it.